What's really going on, everyone? Back again with another episode. We have been booked and busy these last couple of weeks. We have just released an episode today as we are recording on Thursday, May 15th. We have the pleasure of getting a guest that we have long tried to have join us. We have the pleasure of being joined by State Representative Inga Willis, who currently represents District 55 in the Georgia House of Representatives proudly since 2022. A Democrat, her district includes portions of Fulton County, which is in Atlanta and the most populous county in Georgia. Outside of public office, Ms. Willis does a little bit of everything. She is a brand manager, political strategist, public speaker. She began actually her career as a songwriter for Artista Records, which includes a Grammy nomination. So she is that one. She is also a proud graduate of Howard University and an AKA. So should we call you Miss Willis, State Representative Willis? You tell us how we're supposed to engage with you, but we are so thrilled to have you join us today. First off, how are you?
I'm fantastic. I am honored to be here with you all. Really proud of the work you all have been doing. Always a pleasure to connect with my Howard brothers and sisters. It's an obligation that I cherish and a privilege that just continues to just extend beyond measure. Greatest decision I ever made in my life. I'm sure you feel the same way. Um, Miss Willis is fine.
All right. Well, we can just get it started. I mean, since now is like we were talking about before. Now is just such an interesting time. So obviously, as we said, you represent Fulton County, which is the bedrock of politics, not only in Atlanta but also in Georgia. Your county, I think, it voted for Vice President Harris around 75% of voters there in the
Honored to be in
2024
that number
election.
as well.
There
Yes,
it is.
it's actually my home district. I was born and
Yeah,
raised in Southwest Atlanta, affectionately known as the SWATs, and it is an honor um, to represent the community that raised me. So
yeah,
these elders that I run into as I'm moving around, they not only
yeah,
helped raise me, I serve them now. So it's a very
yeah.
a unique
So,
space.
so in terms of representing Fulton County, as citizens, including the three of us, have kind of struggled to make sense of Trump's reelection and how to move forward. How has that change been for you? I think we've always focused it in terms of us as citizens, but how has it actually been for you as someone who's in public office doing the work that you're doing? And how has it changed your priorities, if it has at all?
It's a great question. I would almost think you were made in the School of Communications. It has changed everything, but I'll be transparent with you all. I don't think it has shifted my priorities. I think my priorities have always been the same. It's a part of how we're raised in Atlanta, particularly in the area that I came up in that you speak of. We were raised around giants. We were raised at the feet of John Lewis. And, now I have the honor of having Ambassador Andrew Young in my district, Mayor Shirley Franklin in my district, two streets over. So this part of Atlanta produces mayors and great leadership. So growing up with that as inspiration and also the influence of giants pouring into you and then gaining more of that at Howard and learning what it means to truly walk in footsteps. I know that I'm obligated and trained for this moment. And so it hasn't thrown me completely off. It was a very bizarre legislative session. I will say that the feeling was much different, but the priority remains the same. The urgency remains the same. The priority is to the people. The priority is to utilize the privileges and the privilege that I have, even in this station, speaking to you, who also sit in seats of privilege as well in your own ways. It is my duty to fight for those who have no privileges and continue to move community forward. I would be tossing away generations of sacrifice if I did not. What it has changed, particularly in Fulton County, I mean, we had the memo, right? You can look at the turnout of the votes. Like we turn up, we turn out, we could always turn out more. So that's another part of the conversation is the apathy is what I'm most concerned about and whether this moment in political theater, I believe we're not at war with strictly just policy, we're at war with propaganda. And
Mm.
having a background in creative arts, my minor was in fine arts, by the way, fun fact. And Chadwick was my classmate, Chadwick Boseman. So I was a fine arts minor. So I've been in arts and theater and music. I'm a creative sitting in this position. And so the way that I view things has a bit of the science of music with it. So you may hear me use those analogies. But the reason you sing a song you hate in the shower and you're like, why am I singing this? I don't even like this song. It's because of repetition. You've heard it so many times, it becomes ingrained in your subconscious. And to me, from a political and policy standpoint and an environmental standpoint, that's what we are battling with. It's being embedded with this propaganda over and over and over again. And the apathetic become more apathetic because they believe it. They believe there's nothing that we can do. They believe that there's nothing we can do in the minority party. And I'm a witness that that simply isn't true in the state legislature.
And when you talk about the propaganda and always seeing the repetition, for someone in your position, like what does fighting back look like? That's something that we always talk about on the podcast about fighting back because it's in a situation where like Democrats are doing what they can, in my opinion, but some people might say that they need to do more, or a lot of people are. So what does someone in your position, what does fighting back look like?
Fighting back can look a lot of ways. Some fighting back you'll never see. So I want to express this in full transparency with you all. Like when you sit in a House of Representatives in the state of Georgia, okay? So I'm sitting in a place, we're sitting on grounds that were once burned to ashes, and a city was rebuilt because of the Civil War. I'm sitting on hallowed ground where people grew up, people that I represent grew up in a segregated South. So fighting back can look like strategy. Fighting back can look like, there are certain things that require the Dems vote in the House of Representatives, for example. So if there's a constitutional amendment, for example, that can't pass without the Democratic vote. Or in this session, we had a huge issue called tort reform, which is horrible for our community, by the way. It only passed by one vote. So sometimes fighting back looks like resistance and just not taking it lying down. Now, there's in the House activity, and then there's camera facing presentation, and then there's you and your community. So it is very easy to get lost in the theater of it all, if you will. But what fighting back truly looks like is being able to know what is forthcoming, what's coming down the pipe, rallying your troops, strategizing, how many votes do we need for this? How can we position ourselves via our relationships to stop a vote from coming to the floor? Like the DEI bill did not come to the House floor this session. We were prepared for it if it did. I certainly was. We gave them our lineup of speakers, just like we did last year. I was on that list. Last year was they wanted to dedicate a statue to Clarence Thomas as opposed to dealing with some of the more pertinent issues we wanted to deal with. And we at some point we like, well, we'll bring it on because we'll blow the roof off and walk right out to those cameras. And if that's how you want to carry it, we can carry it like that. So sometimes resistance is stopping bad bills from even coming your way. And I don't think that's something that the public is aware of. They may not know of how many terrible things we've stopped. They may just look at what the news cycle is running, and it may have no insight into our strategic approaches to what we do.
And I would say, yeah, because you don't know what you don't know. And a lot of things that aren't in the media and things that are happening behind closed doors and the advocating and not even getting it to the bills. Like, I'm so happy that you were able to share that because I think a lot of that comes into lost in translation when it comes to these narratives about the parties and all of these it's miscommunication. And I feel like it's overlooking the process that really takes like the business part of what's really happening behind closed doors. So I'm happy that you shared that.
Yeah, I think that's critical to share. I will also share that your state legislatures are open. They're public. The doors are open. We don't see enough people aside from lobbyists and people who may be particularly impacted by proposed legislation who will come to the ropes and talk to us. But I think it would be beneficial to build track what's coming through the state legislature so that you can see. I always share with people, Mackenzie, that the lower the name is on the ballot, the closer that position is to your daily life. So we tend to focus at the top, and the top is super important. But as you get down, you've got the state legislature that sets the budget for the state. It's how much teachers are going to be paid. It's whether we're going to have an increase. It's HBCU funding at the state level. It's all of these, and it's where the sausage is made. Now, it's not sexy. You know, most people in Atlanta run for city office. Like nobody really. So I decided to hone in on state number one so that I could have a starting point that gave me a purview of how things work through a broad lens, because I was born and raised in a city that remains the beacon of Black political leadership in the country, and we intend to keep it that way. But in order to be able to serve wherever I may land after I leave here, or if I stay here, I didn't study political science in college. I took the class, it changed my life. You know, I've been around politics my entire life, but I needed to learn how are bills proposed? How are they made? How are they stopped? You know, who is running it over here? And I learned quickly that the bubble of Atlanta and the bubble of Howard, a beautiful bubble, I might add, gave me this insular perspective on something that was broader for a state like Georgia. Like HBCUs run the city of Atlanta. University of Georgia runs this state.
I'm so glad you're literally kind of dropping the breadcrumbs of just the civil rights movement, Black political leadership, all of that, because as you kind of just spoke to us sitting here, we're Howard University graduates, and we have a privilege that, you know, some everyday people don't have. I'm sure you have a cousin or a friend that you're from Atlanta, so you know how that works. That doesn't have that knowledge or doesn't have that training. So for like the everyday person that's feeling powerless, where the wages are low, we have high rent, high groceries, like everything is just expensive. What actions do you think we can take, or they can take, or it's a we can take to push back, as you spoke to, like electing local, you know, politicians, that's what really affect us, and so on and so forth. What actions do you think you can give an everyday person to push back and understand the resources around them and the bedrock in which they stand in?
I appreciate that question, Henry. I think that I try not to view people as different. We have different experiences, right? But we have to be careful not to allow condescension to meet us where exposure gives us privilege. And what I mean by that is there's something to learn from everyone. And you all know this. In the hair salon, in the barbershop, walking down the street, people are walking up to me. They're like, we want speed example. We want Rep Willis. These are my neighbors. Okay. The elders in my neighborhood. We want speed bumps. People driving through fast to the neighborhood. I'm like, ma'am, that is the city council. I serve in the state. Here's whom you should contact. I'm happy to introduce you to your city council person. But what we're actually facing is our community is not well versed on civics and what happens where. So those of us who have access to these things and reach like you all do and like I do, it's actually our responsibility to spread that information out and cook it down. My grandmother lived to be 102, and she used to say, Inga, you talk filet mignon, you talk steak talk, okay? The people talk beef broth. Sometimes you gotta cook it down. I think part of our problem in November was we rely so heavily on intellect and facts. We're like, well, that's not true. It's actually 8.3. Nobody cares about the percentage point. They care about how they feel in their daily lives. So I think what community can do in conjunction with community leadership, you can find a community leader at a NPU meeting. You can't run for office without going to talk to all the women who have been NPU neighborhood planning unit leadership. You have to go through neighborhoods to run for office. I think we should take that same approach with change and change implementation. So if there's an issue that you have in your community, you go to your NPU meeting, you meet your NPU leadership, you take some people with you, or you let people whom you view as not having access to that knowledge, bring them in the fold and say, hey, we can do something about this. We don't have to say yes to all of the liquor licenses that come into the neighborhood. They take a vote on that at the NPU level, and that's where that stops. But if they don't know that, they'll watch the news and say the mayor needs to do X, Y, and Z. And it just helps to know who's responsible for what. Because if you don't know that, then where does the accountability plan come in? And so that's one thing I think that we can do. Two, I think that we should broaden our spheres of communication and cease talking in bubbles, right? It's very easy to talk to people that are in our natural orbit, and we can debate issues all day. Hell, I went to Howard. Debate is a sport. It's like, it's what we're going to do. It's why some people like, I probably couldn't stand us if I wasn't one of us. Like, we're going to debate it. We'll do it at a party. We'll do it wherever it needs to be done. That is not necessarily the language of every community, but that is a skill set that has been honed and embedded, and we carry it with pride, right? That's our intellectual jousting as a sport, right? But when you're talking about change in community, we have to be multilingual. We have to be able to communicate with someone who has never caught a break. We have to be able to communicate with someone who is this close to giving up on life. And I have, you know, I've run into members in the community. I was on a social media site one day, and people in my community were in like this conversation, and there was a gentleman in there who expressed to the group that he was so worn out and destitute that he felt suicidal. Like, I've had to call constituents who needed mental health resources. So there are ways that we can assist people that aren't necessarily political policy, but are part of being a cohesive and providing community and a good human. From good human behavior comes interest. And you lead by example. So, as you all know, the Howard way is, you're going to know I was there once I'm there. I'm coming in, I'm showing up, I'm doing all the things. But that's when little girls will run after me and say, Miss Inga, how can I be like you? And I'm like, no, 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 you want to be like you. Okay. And here's the pathway. So I think it's vision casting for people that we run across. This question is deep. Example, I went in to upgrade my dad's phone today. Today's his 99th birthday. And the young man, right, the young man who assisted me, the brother who assisted me, his name was Corey. And we just got to talking. He was great. And I just asked him, how long have you been working here in the AT&T store? And he said, I've been here 5 years. And I said, well, where are you from? He was from Atlanta. Where'd you go to school? He said he went to Georgia State. So, but the way he responded, he's like, I went to Georgia State and I haven't even used the degree. And by the time I left there, his perspective changed. I said, you don't just put that on the table like it's nothing. You're still a part of less than 12% of the race that has a college education, period. So perhaps it's how you're looking at it. Have you thought about going to grad school? And he said, nobody's ever talked to me like this. And maybe I will. I said, you've been here this long. Do they have professional development stipends? He said, actually, they do. I've never used it. I'm like, that you can. I mapped it out for him. And by the time I left, he was like, thank you. Thank you, Rep. Willis. I'm really going to give some serious thought to maybe going to grad school, because I didn't get that network with where I chose to go to school, but it was my only choice. But maybe I can build a network here. So it was just allowing an encounter not to be transactional, but transformative. And I think that's each of our personal responsibility.
Yeah, and I
You,
think that that's so, oh, sorry, Noah.
yeah, go ahead.
I think that that's so important to talk about. And I want you to talk about the importance of HBCUs since you were talking about that, because, HBCUs, DEI, everything is under attack. And when you talk about community, personally, I didn't go to grad school, but I know a lot of our classmates that did go to grad schools, particularly if they went to PWIs, they feel like they didn't have the community and the support that they did at Howard. And I find that a lot, especially across HBCUs, that you have that community family like feeling when you're on campus. Everybody wants you to win, and grad school necessarily or PWIs aren't necessarily the same. So if you could talk about like the importance of protecting the HBCU experience.
I could talk about that all day. Uh, I'm a fourth generation HBCU graduate, but for smaller institutions like Benedict College in South Carolina that educated my grandmother, I would not have been able to choose my dream school. And so it takes generations of steps, right? Um, in the current climate, I gave the keynote speech for Accepted Students Day here in Atlanta for the baby bison that are coming and those that were still on the fence. By the time I finished, the decision was solid, I might add. But you're looking at a populace of students, many first generation, right? There is an HBCU for every student. And it's about finding that school, the intimacy of class size. And I shared with the students, and I'll share with you all. I said, how many first generation students do we have? And like six of them stood up. Well, they raised their, I said, stand up. You're not gonna, you're breaking the chain of poverty. You are shifting the trajectory of your family lineage. One young man took public transportation, the MARTA bus, to get to Accepted Students Day by himself. And so it's from that to fourth or fifth generation that you find the Howard student populace, right? HBCUs, and I told them, I said, I know one place where books aren't being taken off the bookshelves. And I know a place that you can go and walk into the Moreland Sping Art Research Center and see the actual documentation of foundations of entities that still exist today. You have to, we have to learn about ourselves somewhere. A bit about me, I went to predominantly white high school, private, played soccer. My elementary school, I was the only Black student in my grade. I went to public school for middle school. It was mixed, but I knew I was going to an HBCU because my parents said so. They said, our money goes to an HBCU. You can pick anyone you want. Anything else, you better get a full ride, right? But I also had a different world playing in the background, which was the only thing I was allowed to watch, and the Cosby Show at that time. So my vision casting was based upon my orbit. But HBCUs have been producing excellence with fewer resources since inception. I also let students know it's fine if you want to choose a PWI, but it was Howard that gave you Brown versus Board of Education, drafted upon the desktops of Howard Law. And so whenever you choose something, just know who you are to thank. And in this instance, it's us. And so they don't know that. We're looking at funding challenges in the current administration at the top. You're looking at state funding that goes into HBCUs. If I juxtapose the amount of money that goes to Georgia Tech, University of Georgia, Georgia State, and juxtapose that with Savannah State and Fort Valley, okay? Thousands of miles apart. But the beautiful thing about HBCUs is the professors that are there want to be. The opportunity to perhaps not have the highest GPA coming out of high school and have a school take a chance on you is there. I keynote speak in the orbit. I go to Benedict. I come every time because my grandmother went there. And I'm meeting students who can't go home for summer because they fear not returning because they'll be going back into an environment that's not conducive with academic excellence. So those are the students that we then have to find summer opportunities for, et cetera. But the legacy is clear. The brand is substantial. What's interesting is watching the shift in application trajectory under this current administration. It is my hope that more students will come home. It is my hope that other students will receive the gift and beauty that I did and that you did that changed my life. To see the Mecca, to think when I came to Howard that, well, I went to private school, nobody's going to be able to relate to me about that, or I played soccer, or all the things that may discount how I may be able to fit in, and all of the mentors I've sent. One just graduated magna cum laude from School of Business, sat on the autistic spectrum. Teachers gave up on him. The only person who didn't was his mother and his father. They were both graduates of a PWI. He said he wanted to go to Howard, presented his case on like a case analysis, somehow found me. I talked him through, shredded his essay 7 times. He finally got it right. He just graduated with honors. And that's the difference that an HBCU can make. Because he got to Howard, he got to go to London. He got to do a semester exchange. He got to do this, he got to do that. So we wouldn't be where we are without it. And we are responsible for pipelining students in our home communities to HBCUs. It's our duty, because they may not get that push at their schools, or someone may say, well, you need to go somewhere diverse. I'm like, Howard was the most diverse place I've ever been. People were from all over the world. Like, Black people aren't one way.
Preach.
No, and one thing, and I think we've been just, you've said so many things that I think it's so hard to, I think, go back and I think how to remember the thing that you said 5 minutes ago. But I think um, a lot of what you just said just made me think a lot about, honestly, the reason why we started this podcast. I think in terms of making sure that we're not only connecting with people who are doing the work, having questions about what that looks like, but also how do we simply just talk about it? And I think I would love your thoughts in terms of, I think clearly, I think the three of us can feel it in terms of actually your connection and grounding to community and how that translates actually into the work that you do, how you engage with everyone, where you feel like family. You feel like someone who I think all of us could see in our personal settings. Um, how do you think you actually can be kind of the guide for, I think, other politicians to, I think, engage with our community? And I think that there is kind of there's a lack of connection that I'm sure you felt in terms of people not feeling like those folks in the state house and the governor's mansion in Congress are actually connected to their daily lives or actually understand the things that you're going. And clearly you do, but how can at least, I don't even know if there's a question in this, but I think how can at least you take, I think, your natural way of, I think, engaging to be a model in terms of, hey, this is actually how we connect to a community that feels politically detached. And what does that look like?
Well, first, I think there are more people like me than you may think. I think that the trajectory of individuals running for office is shifting. So when I came into the House of Representatives in Georgia, we were the largest, most diverse class in legislative history. And it's the first space I've been in quite some time where they're like, oh, you're so young. I'm like, I'm a baby here? Wow. Like, that identified something for me. That identified a lack of succession planning, a need for more people to actually run for office, right? Like, I didn't know this is where I'd be talking to you from. I could be talking to you from a myriad of places just based upon my career experience, right? But I saw a need and I did it. And so that's one thing. Two, identifying people in your orbit, like, you need to run for office. What are you running for? What are you doing? And then three, actually encouraging everyone that you all have on or talk to in your, okay, do you know who your state rep is? Do you know what they do? Okay, let's make a connection there. Do you know who your city council person, giving people the heat map of how to connect with their leadership and them knowing and having the confidence that, hey, I voted for you. I'm calling you. I expect to hear from you. And if you don't show up for me, we're voting you out. It's just that simple. If
Yeah.
I don't do what I'm supposed to do in community, I don't get reelected. Lucky for me, or not lucky, but as it turns out, I'm in a community I grew up in. I don't have to get to know it. It's like breathing for me. I know these people. I know the guys at the corner store. I know I know them. They know me. They encourage me. I see them. I'm from Atlanta. They're like, Miss Lady, we so proud of you. Like it's just a thing happening. But how to do it is to be authentic, to be who you say you are. And
Do
some people
you
are just performative. So it's like, I believe in one, two, three, four. And it's like, we never seen you around here before.
do you think um, do you think that this line of business affords the average person the opportunity to be authentic? Because I think that we've had long conversations about how, admittedly, it is more challenging for Black women to be authentically themselves in this space. I think, Vice President Harris is a great example of that. I think there's always a tension between Black women in any role of power being able to authentically be themselves. Now, granted, you have chosen to do that.
I think that I
But
think
I'm,
that I think that
Mhm.
time has come. And it doesn't happen. It's not like flipping a switch. It happens with persistence, right? We can look at our good brother Cory Booker, who took the floor for that record amount of time, you know, when he came off that, which was so inspiring to watch. We were in the middle of legislative session. We were down. We were feeling it. I was still going through all of the phases of grief from the November election. You know, you can't come in like I told you so. You got to work with people. People have to recognize that sometimes they don't know what they don't know. And in addition to that, um, I respectfully disagree. I think that the community is calling for people they recognize. And that's not an aesthetic, that's your composite. And the more we put forward candidates who reflect the authenticity that we desire, the more diverse the bodies become. And so I don't feel that I can't be myself, but I also know that I come from a space of training and education that taught me how to properly present in any environment. And so it's back to what I said about being multilingual. Like, who's the audience? My audience today are Howard grads. So this is this is just all me. Like it's like talking to friends or younger siblings. It's comfortable, but you also have to know how to maneuver in discomfort, right? I'm also talking to you from a city where we've had three Howard mayors. Being myself is not unfamiliar. And I don't feel that way. I ran as myself, but there are parts of me that resonate with all parts of community. And that's the type of cohesion and collaborative you have to have. You can't be one dimensional, if that makes sense. I'm not a victim. I'm a victor. I won't, and I won't walk in victimhood. If I don't like it, I'll work to transform it. If I can't change it fully, I'll make it a little bit better for whoever comes behind me. Like that's my job. My dad turned 99 today. He's not complaining that he wasn't able to be himself. And he was in World War II teaching swimming before the pools were segregated. So who am I to complain and say, I feel like I can do anything I choose to do? And we'll keep going until it's done. And that's the type of energy and perspective we need to shift, I think, is because it's easy to get stuck in the not and lose sight of the is. Like what is true is we are free and we have the freedom to push, to build, and to collaborate. I'm sitting looking at these squares right now, and Henry raised his hand when I said first generation. And if I ask the rest of you, this is a diverse group right here. So we have all of these stories and ancestors behind us. So I don't live in a place, and I know that others do, but I don't live in a place. And I don't serve in a legislature in a place, even though I'm in the minority party where I can't be myself. I wear them out every chance I get, respectfully, just so they know, like, we're not monolithic. You can't view the Black community as one thing. There's not one prescription for poverty. You can't look at the what without analyzing the why, you know, but we can't get stuck in the why and not focus on what needs to be done, if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense, and I'm glad you speak so much like toward community because community in Atlanta is shifting on a daily with all these like transplants, shall I say? I'm a
Okay.
transplant myself, and it's causing rent to raise, but the wages are not shifting up. I so like a lot of people in your district, the Midtown area, myself included, have maybe been priced out of that area. What is your plan to kind of fight back against like predatory developers and like helping people be able to reside or even purchase homes? Because recently, a study came out that like 30% of the homes in suburban Atlanta are owned by companies, which
Yes,
isn't, you know.
major problem. I didn't know you lived here, and I'm glad to know that you do. So if we look at Senator Ossoff just put something out. We actually went to the same high school. Put something out this week, which is, an investigation into how many, homes and communities are corporate owned. So that's an example of necessary legislation at the state level and at the federal level. So it's like identifying an issue. So if we know the issue, right, we know the symptoms. The issue is that corporations are able to come through communities and make sometimes cash deals with elders. It's almost predatory marketing. We know that. So we can diagnose and talk about the symptoms and the problems all day. The solution is to say we need to set a cap on how many corporate purchases are allowed. Where do we start with that? At the state level. What is the city's policy? It's coordinating city, state, and federal, right? That's why it's important to know everyone. So we need to know what's going on at the congressional level and the United States senatorial level. So John Ossoff is leading that off. He's our senior ranking member in the state, right? What can we do at the state level? Can we set a cap on how many homes are purchased in a community? And it's not just that, it's Airbnbs, it's so many things that are happening. Um, in my mother's neighborhood, there's an Airbnb next door. It's turned up half the time. It's owned by a corporation out of New York. So you can't even call locally to address an issue. They hide behind companies. It's so I think it's a multi-layered problem. But to answer your question, step by step, we have to do what needs to be done to maintain our communities. I'm from and represent an area in Southwest Atlanta that is one of the last Black strongholds, period. Okay. And most people who come from out of town, like you mentioned, they don't know about the gem of Southwest Atlanta, or that you can get an acre or two or whatever it may be. Now you may have to do a full renovation. You have to have an appreciation for the nostalgia of it all. And you can get what you want. But if you like the shiny things, my dear, the shiny things are always going to come with a price. They just are. And so it's unrealistic to say, hey, how can you make this affordable? I can't. I can't. But what I can do is limit the amount of corporations who can come in and buy up a community. And then we can be more responsible and accountable with going into those communities and buying. We do it in our friend circle all the time. Like, hey, when are y'all moving back home? Y'all moving back to Atlanta? Okay, we need to buy in our parents' neighborhood. It's like that. It's like we don't have to promote everything that we do, but there's a reason it's being preserved in certain places, and there's a reason that it's not. As far as jobs and inflation, economics fluctuate. You know this. And so, with false promises of lowering prices and doing all of these things, eggs still high. People outside telling me eggs still high, rent still too high. You know, I can't find a good job. We are going through adjusting to this new leadership. We still remain the most educated Black populace in the country. That's how special this place is. And so it's not a lack of exposure, it's a lack of purchasing. It's prioritizing what we purchase. A lot of people have these conversations with me that are rioting in a mortgage versus prioritizing pure ownership of an appreciating asset versus a depreciating asset. So if we don't make personal sacrifices, those of us who are able and lead by example, we can't have the expectation that others will ever be able to say, I want to go through the torturous process of becoming a first-time homeowner. The process itself is so daunting. Most people are like, I quit, it's too hard, but it's hard for a reason. And
Hmm.
so I think that we can do more, the educated class of us, to pool more resources, pour back into a more circular economy where we circulate the dollar within our communities more frequently. We've seen the hit that Target has taken. Like, where do we take that next? Why are we waiting for someone to tell us what to do instead of doing what we know needs to be done? And that's the place we need to get to across the board. No one's coming to save us. Or if someone has come, let me know.
No, they're not. You're coming to save us, okay? But speaking of which, honestly, when you talk about saving us, I saw that you recently was reintroduced this bill about black hair, or like the hair that we use. And I always feel like black women's hair is always, it's always something. It's just something. It's a product that's recalled. It's the hair we're using. It's just always something. So could you first just talk about what you hope to accomplish with this and, like how you plan, especially in a place like Atlanta, like a Black Mecca, how you plan to make sure all the girls are using the right hair?
Well, yeah, I have to tell you a story to tell you the why for me, but you're talking about HR 952. It's a resolution I proposed to do a study committee on the connectivity between straightening products, hair straightening products, and at this moment, breast cancer. My intention is to extend the study to include female malignancies writ large, which would include fibroids, breast cancer, and uterine cancer. And then a wider net is just hair care products and cancer, period, because our brothers are also using beard products and, it's
Yeah.
going right into the skin. So while I was running for office, the night I found out I beat the other Democrat, I saw one of my childhood friends I hadn't seen in 15 years. He gives me a big bear hug, and I am in excruciating pain in my chest. So I know something is wrong. Long story short, I'm diagnosed with breast cancer, and I'm running for office, so I couldn't tell anyone. Um, my line sister from Howard University, the one that never partied with us, the one that was always sitting in scrubs like, I can't go, I really need to get this, ended up being my surgeon and saved my life. And it was at a time when mammograms were backed up because of the pandemic. You couldn't get the doctor's appointments, etc. So I share that with you to say that that is my truth. But also, if I have difficulty navigating a system and I have the resources, I have two insurances, I got doctors in my phone. I went to Howard. We produced doctors there in Atlanta. I helped make AKAs of Spelman. That's the rest of the doctors in the city of Atlanta. So like I have the resources, and it was a hurdle for me. And I didn't have the cancer gene, so it was an inexplicable tumor that did not go through my lymph nodes, extremely rare. That changed my life. It changed what mattered to me. It changed after you fought for your life and won, you change.
Mhm.
And so now that I'm in this seat, the question becomes, what type of legislator do I want to be? What do I want to be remembered for? And what can I change? I can't change anything with the companies if I don't have the data to support the ask. I can't ask the companies to change labeling if I have not done the research. I can't fight effectively with feeling. I have to accumulate the facts. And so, what the study committee would do is allow me to bring in toxicologists, allow me to bring in, doctors, survivors like myself, all of the things, and ask the question, why do 9 out of 10 Black women suffer from fibroids? Why? Whether it was your mother, sister, grandmother, me, you, whatever, with no explanation. Now, those are typically benign, non-cancerous. But I have a childhood girlfriend right now who thought it was a fibroid. It was a malignant uterine tumor. And so now what has emerged is hair care products. There are two lawsuits in the Georgia Supreme Court. Some of these companies are headquartered in Georgia, and braiding hair, synthetic hair specifically, having chemicals that cause cancer in them. There's no labeling on it. We get braids, we wear them for 3, 4 months. I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing for summer right now because I got to go on vacation. And showing the community and inviting them in to say, we are utilizing products that are harmful, and these are the adjustments we need to make. Does that go all the way back to childhood? Probably, right? But if you can't give me an explanation for a diagnosis and you tell me that it's supposed to be 1 in 8 women get breast cancer, but I know far more than that in Atlanta. And in Atlanta, the number of women, Black women who have breast cancer is above the national average. I have more questions than answers. And so what I hope to do is shed light on the issue, right? And as someone who gets their hair done every 7 days, and I,
I know that's right.
right? Like this is something that's a part of my self-care, or so
Yeah.
I thought. And then I get diagnosed. I have to go through a mastectomy. I have to go through radiation. I have to go through recovery in solitude because I don't want people to think I'm ill-equipped to run for office. And I don't want anybody else to have to go through that without an explanation, especially if they can shift everyday behaviors, and especially if it turns out that some of this is preventive. So it's exploratory research with experts of space to better inform what we should be doing legislatively. And whether that is the FDA at the federal level or labeling and consumer affairs is a committee I sit on at the state level, just to be able to come in that equipped and ready to go with facts as opposed to just emotion. Emotion doesn't move the needle, not in this place.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's
Um,
my objective. And it's and then we have prostate cancer, we have all these other things. Why is it ravaging Black men? Don't know. Is it something preventable besides not going to the doctor? Because we'll just say, oh, they don't go to the doctor. Well, I don't know about that. Like, we all spend a lot of time in the barbershop and the hair salon. I just want to make
no,
sure it's not harming
yeah,
us.
no, I love that. I love that aspect of just kind of questioning your assumptions and not kind of going for the easy answer. Because if there was an easy fix, I'm sure we would have figured it out by now. But I think I speak for the three of us when I say, as well as I think this has been probably our favorite conversation, I think, with a person of elected office. I think we appreciate you for, I think, just being yourself, being authentically you, being unafraid to, I think, question your assumptions, show up for us in the way that you know best to, because that's the right way. And I think on behalf of us, on behalf of everybody listening, watching, no matter where they are, I think we just want to thank you. But also, where can people connect with you? I think people are going to take to your story, take to your vision. We have a
There's
large
not a whole
listenership in
lot of Black
Atlanta.
Angus out here. I hope that I'm your fave. I am Inga Willis, INGAWILLIS, 4GA on most of my platforms. Last on the ballot, first to serve. That's just a tagline and a shameless plug. But I appreciate you all. Like, I think I know, not I think, I know that you're doing very important work, and you don't always see the impact or the breadth and reach and scope and the magnitude of what you're transmitting, right? But I remember when I got this invite, it was a while ago, and so much stuff going on. But I remember telling my office, like, I'm going to do this. Let's just figure out when it's going to be. I said that because of how you presented it to me, how it came to me, like Howard, check, 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 checked all the boxes. So there are some places I'm going to make time for, and that's going to always be community. That will always be something like this. If there's something that you need from me, if we need a consistent conversation, if we need something during session, if we need whatever would help push it, I'm available to you. But also, I don't want you all to feel powerless in this moment. Like, you have the power of network and platform. And it is your duty to push it further and relay the urgency. It's like we're running a relay race, right? And we are already several Olympics behind. And like, we got to push. We got to push now. Like, we can't retreat. We have to push. We need more of us. We need more of you. We need more of me. We need succession planning. We need to be talking to our elders. We need to make sure that we are as healthy as possible. We need to look at what we are putting in our minds, what we're listening to. There is no white noise right now in the background. Like, I can't even deal with it. So I offer myself to you for whatever may be necessary to help amplify political advocacy, community amplification, and I'm just chronicling my journey as a new legislator who feels fully trained and equipped, but I'm still a student. I'm still learning, and we can't feel defeated by November. Our sister was still the most powerful woman in the world. She
Period.
went farther than anyone has ever gone.
Okay, I have to ask, how
Go
does it
ahead.
feel for Kamala to be your profile?
Indescribable. I can't. So when I was a younger neophyte, we would get reached out to. This is back to the power of HBCUs and connections. And I remember they said, there's a big sister running for DA, whatever office she was running for at the time. And so we were always the first donors. If you didn't have any money, it was $19.08. If you had a little more, it was, $190. If you had more than that, it was 1,000. If you had more than that, you maxed out. But like, so sisterhood to me is a very serious matter. And so I had the privilege of introducing her in Atlanta several times when she spoke, when she was campaigning for president the first time, by the way, making sure she never went into a room and felt alone, calling everybody we could, making sure alums were there, HBCU grads. So it felt like I was watching every part of me. Usually I can connect with the candidate on one thing, like, okay, they went to HBCU, bet. Oh, okay, he's a Kappa. But this was like all of my things at once. It was sensory overload. It was inspiring. It was my job to, I'm sure, like you all, defend her name, defend her intellect, defend her integrity. Because what we're not going to do is act like this woman wasn't qualified. And what we're not going to do is act like she was intellectually anything less than brilliant. Because what it actually takes to get where she has gotten, my God, has anybody else done it? No. So therefore, it felt like home to me, and it felt like I was all money in. And I remain that way. I have no regrets. I did my part. It wasn't me. I also feel like she was given the shortest unfair runway, and that's another topic. We could talk about that on another episode. But I was proud. I was proud to be Howard. I was proud to be elected. I was proud to be a Black woman. And anybody who questions her Blackness is questioning mine. So I honestly felt if you don't like her, baby, you don't like me either.
Period. Okay.
And I think, Miss Willis, I think that's the best point to end. I think you have literally summarized, I think Mackenzie can attest, the last year of conversations that we have had. And I think in terms of her inspiring you, I think you have inspired us. And I think this will not be the last time that we talk, and that we look forward to continuing the conversation. And I think for you being a part of both our journey. So we just wanted to thank you, and you can be sure to check her out. On Instagram, we will include all of her social media in our tags. And be sure to follow us for more of these great conversations at WRGO Pod.